how to roll out a slab. More specifically, how to roll out a slab at home. So in the classroom, we use our canvas surface. We use a rolling pin and 2 wooden slats. Now, why wooden slats? Well, they ensure that your slab is not going to be any thinner than the thickness of these 2 wooden slats. You place your slab in between and you roll the rolling pin on top. And because the rolling pin now has a barrier, right? The slab cannot get any thinner than these wooden slats. You don't want your slab to be too thick or too thin, and you don't want it to be of uneven thickness. So that's what we use in the classroom. However, you have to find alternatives for a rolling pin and wooden slats at home. So what you can use in lieu of a rolling pin is some sort of tube or a smooth bottle, such as a hydro flask bottle or this spray can here. I can use this part to roll. I can also use this part of this can as well. I also have this Glade bottle here, Glade spray. I can use this. I could also use this cardboard tube that was used for foil. So those are my alternatives. But then the alternatives for the wooden slats, because for your coil bowl, the slab, the ideal thickness for your slab should be 1/4 inches. So we have to find an alternative that's going to substitute for the wooden slats. What can work are 2 books that are the same thickness, about 1/4 inch thick. And you can check using a ruler. You can check. So 2 books that are the same thickness, about 1/4 inch thick. So what I have at home that I can use, I have these 2 books here I could use. This is a little more than 1/4 inch, right? You can see that they're not exactly the same thickness, but they're pretty close. I could use these books. But what I'm actually going to use are these 2 paper pads. This is some sort of drawing paper and this is some sort of marker paper. So you can actually check with a ruler to see it's a little over 1/4 inch thick, but that'll work. So to prepare your rolling pin alternative, you need to wrap your tube with plastic wrap. Do you want clay getting all over this? Probably not. Plus, the clay is likely going to stick. Just like how we covered the bowl for your slump or drape mold, you need to cover it with plastic wrap. So that's what's covering here. So you need plastic wrap covering your rolling pin alternative. You can tape it as well. So to set up, I'm going to show you how to get that ready to go. So to begin rolling your slab, first of all, make sure you wedged your clay. Now you need a chunk that is about 3 to 4 inches in width because it needs to be big enough so when it flattens out, it can go over or slump inside your bowl, which you'll be seeing later on. So before we even start rolling it out, we actually have to flatten it to begin rolling. So the best way to flatten the clay is to hit it a bunch of times. I flip it around a few times. So I'm literally just hitting this clay, smacking it down. Why are we flattening it this way? Well, we got to get it started because it's going to be kind of silly trying to roll this out while it's a big piece. Because when you roll it out, you don't want to go, right? You don't want to go over it. You want to flatten it out. So I've got my tube that I'm going to use. It's covered in plastic wrap so the clay doesn't stick so easily. I have my substitutes for my wooden slats so it doesn't go any thinner than this. I also have my rubber rib or my rubber rib substitute, and I have my needle tool because we're going to need that later on. So once you've flattened out that piece of clay, we actually have to start rolling it. Now you'll notice it's kind of crinkly in the video because it's sticking to the plastic wrap, which is normal. And you're going to see texture form, which I will show you how to get rid of later on. So I'm going to roll it back and forth. Now it's still too thick. It's definitely not thin as that. So what I'm going to do is just flip it over and continue rolling it out. All right, you notice that the slab is getting kind of long. We need to get wider. So what you want to do is take it and rotate it 90 degrees. You just flip it over a little bit because we got to get this wider. Okay, I'm going to flip it over one more time because again, I want to get this a little bit wider. It's almost the same thickness as this booklet. Again, how do I know? Because when I'm rolling on this side, it's not getting too thin. All right, starting to get a little bit wider. Now I'm going to turn it 90 degrees again. Now you might be thinking, ugh, this edge looks terrible. That doesn't matter because if I'm going to use this for my drape mold, I just need enough to go around and over it, right? Because we're going to trim parts of it later. So I'm pretty much done rolling out my slab. But however, I have this horrible texture on here. I need to get rid of this texture. So what I can use is my rubber rib or my rubber rib substitute. So you want to smooth out both sides of the slab using the rubber rib. So what's nice is about the rubber rib is it doesn't drag too much clay off. But this is why it's my favorite tool. Great for smoothing out slabs. Then I'm going to flip it over the other direction because right now it caught the texture of the canvas, which I don't want. Then, after you smoothed out your slab, it's a good idea to check for air pockets. Yes, you wedged your clay, but you know, at some point you just have to trust the process. So how do you check for air pockets? So to check for air pockets, depending on how well your room is lit where you're working with clay, take a look and see, do you see any air bubbles? You'll see air bubbles because you'll notice there's literally a difference in like a little bubble that's just like right on the surface. That's a fingerprint, so that doesn't really count. So it's a good idea just to check, do you have any air pockets? I don't see any visible air pockets, but if you had an air pocket, what you can do is take your needle tool, and I'm going to demonstrate right on the edge here. What you can do is actually cut it out. You just rip out the edge of the clay that has the air pocket, and then you can actually remove that clay. Problem is, if you do that to a lot of areas in your slab, you might as well start over. But like for this little bit here, what I can do is score this little bits of clay that fell off, and I can always fill it up, you know, add some slip, and then smush it back together. So you can do that. But if you have air pockets, there's a chance the slab might blow up. So you definitely want to check for air pockets. So when you're done rolling out your slab, you want to smooth out both sides of the slab using the rubber rib and check for air pockets.